Please be seated. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you enjoyed your lunch. During the lunch hour, if your answer is yes to any of my questions, please raise your hand. During the lunch hour, did any of you have any discussions amongst yourselves or with anybody else about the case? No hands are being raised. Did any of you read or listen to any radio, television, or newspaper reports about the case? No hands are being raised. Did any of you use any type of an electronic device to go on the internet to do independent research about the case, people, places, things, or terminology? No hands are being raised. And finally, did any of you read or create any emails, text messages, Twitters, tweets, blogs, or social networking pages about the case? No hands are being raised. Thank you very much. Mr. De La Rianda?
Your Honor, at this time we would formally play the Hannity interview on July 18th, 2012. And I think there's a preliminary instruction, of course.
Yes. Ladies and gentlemen, at the direction of the court, certain portions of the defendant's interview with Sean Hannity on July 18th, 2012 have been excised or redacted based upon legal determinations made by the court. The parts excised or redacted are not relevant, and you are not to concern yourselves with why this occurred or with the content of any excised or redacted portions. You may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. This will, for the record, states Exhibit 180.
Tonight, in an interview that you will only see right here on Hannity, George Zimmerman, the man charged with second-degree murder of Trayvon Martin, breaks his silence. Now, earlier today, I traveled to Seminole County, Florida. Let's go back to the night of the shooting. Take us back to that night. You were going to the store. Let's start at the beginning.
I was going to Target to do my weekly grocery shopping. Sunday nights was the only nights, well, Sunday after we mentored the kids, we would always go grocery shopping and do our cooking for the week. So I wanted to go to Target, and I headed out, and that's the last time I've been home.
Since then, you never went back since that day. We all have heard the 911 call. On that 911 call, you had mentioned that there had been a number of break-ins in the neighborhood. Why were you a community watch person? How long were you involved in that, and why did you become a community watch person?
In August of 2011, there was a home invasion. A young lady was home with her 9-month-old baby, and they broke in her sliding glass door. She barricaded herself in the upstairs bedroom, and my wife was home by herself, and she saw the people that burglarized her run through our backyard with their belongings. And even though my wife wasn't certain what happened, that was enough to scare her and shake her up. And I promised her I would do what I could to keep her safe.
Your gun was legal. You had a legal weapon in the state of Florida.
Yes, sir.
Why did you feel the need to carry a gun? A lot of people maybe have a weapon inside their home, but you decided to carry yours. Why did you think it was necessary to have a weapon with you, and did you carry it at all times?
I carried it at all times except for when I went to work.
Yeah. A lot of this case legally has to do with stand your ground. You've heard a lot about it, and I was just curious, prior to this night, this incident, had you even heard stand your ground?
No, sir.
You'd never heard about it before? Wow. Now, it was very interesting, in the 911 call that everybody has heard, you said that all of a sudden you found somebody who looked suspicious. He may be on drugs. That was one of the earlier comments that you made in that 911 call. What made you think he was suspicious, and what made you think that he might be on drugs?
I felt he was suspicious because it was raining. He was in between houses, cutting in between houses, and he was walking very leisurely for the weather. It didn't look like he was a resident that went to checked their mail and got caught in the rain and was hurrying back home. He didn't look like a fitness fanatic that would train in the rain. He just seemed like...
Weren't there overhangs though? He was walking, he wasn't standing still? And he was walking closer to the house, which is back from the sidewalk?
Yes, sir.
Am I understanding that right?
The overhangs are just in front of the front doors.
Yeah. You said he started from almost the beginning in that 911 call. You said he came towards you and he seemed to reach for something in his waistband. Did you think that was a gun?
I thought he was just trying to intimidate me.
To make you think that there's a gun?
A weapon.
Of some kind?
Possibly.
You said in that tape, something's wrong with him, he's checking me out, I don't know what his deal was. So it's almost from the very beginning, you felt, are you saying on that 911 tape that you felt threatened at that moment when you said that to the dispatch?
No, not particularly.
What did you mean with, I don't know what his deal is, he's checking me out?
The way he was coming back, and I was on the phone, but I was certain I could see him saying something to me, and his demeanor, his body language was confrontational.
Do you remember what it was that you said specifically on the tape? Yeah. You said, then we get to the issue where you said on the 911 call that he's running. You said that to the dispatch. Is there any chance in retrospect, as you look back on that night and what happened, trying to maybe get into the mindset, because we also have learned that Trayvon was speaking with his girlfriend supposedly at the time, that maybe he was afraid of you, didn't know who you were?
No.
You don't think that, why do you think that he was running that?
Well, maybe I said running, but he was more...
You said he was running?
Yes. It was like skipping, going away quickly, but he wasn't running out of fear.
You can tell the difference?
He wasn't running.
He wasn't actually running?
No, sir.
Okay, but that's what you said to the dispatcher, you thought he was running. And let me ask you this. At that point, we can hear the unbuckling of the seatbelt, hear you opening the car door, and the dispatch asked you at that point, and this became a very key moment that everyone in the media focused on, and the dispatcher asked you, are you following him? And you said yes. Explain that.
I meant that I was going in the same direction as him, to keep an eye on him so that I could tell the police where he was going. I didn't mean that I was actually pursuing him.
So this moment where someone suggested you were out of breath on that tape, you yourself were not running.
No, sir.
And you, I think, made a statement to the police that it was the wind as you were getting out of the car and moving, and that was the sound we hear, not you out of breath.
Yes, sir.
And welcome back to Hannity. We continue now with more of my exclusive interview with George Zimmerman and his attorney, Mark O'Mara. What did you do from that moment forward? Because this is where we get into this minute gap in this case. You know, and what did you do from that minute forward when the dispatch said, we don't need you to follow him? What did you do next?
I walked across the sidewalk onto my street, Retreat View Circle, where I thought I would meet a police officer that I had called.
So you did not continue to follow him at that point?
No, sir.
All right, so you continue from there. You sounded at that moment on the tape, though, a little bit distracted. What was the distraction? That you were looking for him, or?
I wanted to make sure that, I believe they asked me for my address, and I wanted to be sure that nobody was lingering and could hear my address and then come back. And I was making sure that there wasn't anybody that was going to surprise me, and just trying to give them an accurate location.
Because they said, you know, can we meet you here at a certain location? You said, have them call me.
Yes.
Why did you want them at that point to call you?
I hadn't given them correct address. I gave them the clubhouse vicinity. However, I was walking through to my street, Retreat View Circle, and I was going to give them the actual street number and name.
How long was it, George, after that you saw Trayvon again? Because you said you stopped, that you did not continue pursuing him. When did you next see Trayvon Martin?
Less than 30 seconds.
Okay. Where exactly were you at that point? And how far away were you from your car at that moment?
I guess about 100 feet or more.
So you never went further than how far approximately from your car?
I'd estimate it to be approximately 100 feet.
So you never went further than that from the car?
No, sir.
Okay. And so at that point, Trayvon is, all of a sudden you turned around and there he was?
Yes, sir.
What happened next?
He asked me what my problem was.
Export the problem.
Yes, sir. And I was wearing a rain jacket, and I put my cell phone in my jacket pocket as opposed to my jeans pocket where I normally keep it. And I immediately went to grab my phone to this time call 911 instead of a non-emergency. And when I reached into my pants pocket, because that's where I keep it out of habit, it wasn't there, and I was shocked. I looked up, and he punched me and broke my nose.
One shot.
Yes, sir.
So he said to you, you have the problem. Those were the exact words you used. You remember it?
Do you have a problem? What's your problem?
What's your problem? And you said to him, I don't have a problem.
Yes, sir.
You reached for your phone.
I reached for it as I was saying, no, I don't have a problem.
And at that point, you just got hit?
He was already within arm's length from me.
And was that the punch in the nose that broke your nose?
Yes, sir.
Right there, and you went immediately down to the ground?
I don't remember if I went immediately to the ground or if he pushed me to the ground, but I ended up on the ground.
What do you remember happened from there? Because there were police reports and descriptions that you gave, and that you were a little bit dazed, obviously, and at one point you said that you wanted to stop him from hitting your head on the cement.
Yes, sir.
Is that what you told the police?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so after that first hit, what happened next?
He started bashing my head into the concrete sidewalk. As soon as he broke my nose, I started yelling for help. So I was disoriented, and he started slamming my head into the concrete.
Which is where the lacerations came from.
Yes, sir.
You said it was like your head was going to explode. It was a comment that you had given to the police.
Yes, sir. He continued to punch me in the head.
How many times would you estimate that he punched you?
Several. More than a dozen.
And hitting you hard. At what moment could you said you feared for your life? At what moment do you remember when you thought, I may die? Is that, because you said that you feared for your life. Do you remember the exact moment when you felt that?
In hindsight, I would say when he was slamming my head into the concrete and I thought I'd lose consciousness. I didn't know what would happen at that point.
And how close was the concrete to the grass? Because a big issue was also the grass stains that you had on your clothes. And you had made a statement to the police that you wanted to get to the grass. Was that to protect your head from getting banged into the cement again?
Yes, sir.
How close was that in proximity?
It butts up to the concrete.
And were you able to get to the grass?
Yes, sir.
And how did you do that?
I guess you could say shimmy. I mean, he was straddled on me with his full weight, and I would try and sit up and push myself down. And whenever I would sit up, that's when he would take the opportunity to slam my head back down and punch me in the head and continue to hit my nose.
Was he talking to you a lot during this fight, when he was beating you? Because you're saying he's beating you and pounding your head into the cement. Was he talking to you during that time?
Yes.
And he was saying?
Cursing, telling me to shut up, and then finally telling me he was going to kill me.
And he said those words. And he said it. When did he first see your gun?
After we were on the ground, I shimmied with him on top of me, and it made my jacket rise up, and he being on top of me saw it on my right side.
What happened after that?
I felt him take, he had, after he couldn't hit my head on the concrete anymore, he started to try to suffocate me, and I continued to push his hands off of my mouth and my nose, particularly because it was excruciating having a broken nose and him putting his weight on it. And that's the point in time when he started telling me to shut up, shut up, shut up.
Why did he tell you to shut up?
I don't know.
We heard the screams on the one recording from a neighbor that was calling the police, and there's been some dispute whose voice that is. Was that your voice screaming, or was that Trayvon Martin's voice screaming?
My voice. Absolutely.
That was your voice?
Yes, sir.
And the police even said at one time they heard 14 screams. You were screaming that loud?
Yes, sir.
And you said to the police at one point that he put his hand over your mouth. Do you think that was to silence you from screaming?
Yes, sir. I believe he, from what the investigators told me, he knew that I was talking to the police, and I was yelling so that I believed that the police officer was there, and they just couldn't find me. So I was yelling in the hopes that they were in the vicinity and they would come when they heard me yelling.
Do you remember when you yourself reached for your weapon? Do you remember that moment?
Yes, sir.
Tell us about that.
At that point, I realized that it wasn't my gun, it wasn't his gun, it was the gun.
Did he say anything? Because you said he was talking a lot about the gun. Did he say he noticed the gun?
He said, "You're going to die tonight," and took one hand off of my mouth, and I felt it going down my chest towards my belt and my holster, and that's when I didn't have any more time.
Do you think he acted more out of a conscious thought? I mean, I know these events happen very quickly. Do you remember consciously thinking, I've got to grab my gun? Or did you just do it? Was there a conscious thought that went through your head that you thought you were going to die and that you had to take this, you had to get your weapon and fire?
I'd love to give you an answer.
You don't know.
It just happened so quickly.
Now, there was an eyewitness that was out from the very beginning that, in fact, did tell the police the night of the shooting that he saw Trayvon on top of you and did see the beating. There is no witness to the actual shooting itself. Right? Correct?
Besides myself.
Besides yourself.
Yes, sir.
When you think back, and there was one report, or a police report, that actually said you didn't know after you fired, you thought you missed?
I didn't think I hit him, yes.
Yeah. So what happened immediately after the shooting then, George? I understand one guy came out, he said he had a flashlight, that he spoke to you, and you said to call your wife, tell her what happened, that I shot somebody. Do you remember that conversation?
The conversation I had with the gentleman, or?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
You do remember that conversation. And he did talk about it, and his suggestion is that you were very matter-of-fact about it. Do you remember what you said to him? Do you think you were in a state of shock? Did you know that when did you know that Trayvon had died?
When probably about an hour after I got to the police station.
After the shooting, you saw that he was laying there, and obviously injured. There was a moment where you realized that he was shot.
Like I said, he sat up and he said something to the effect of, "You got it," or "You got me." I assumed he meant, "Okay, you got the gun, I didn't get it, I'm not going to fight anymore." At which point, I got out from under him.
Is there anything you regret? Do you regret getting out of the car to follow Trayvon that night?
No, sir.
Do you regret that you had a gun that night?
No, sir.
Do you feel you wouldn't be here for this interview if you didn't have that gun?
No, sir.
You feel you would not be here?
I feel that it was all God's plan, and for me to second guess it or judge it.
Is there anything you might do differently in retrospect, now that time has passed a little bit?
No, sir.
You know, a detective said, that Detective Singleton said, he quoted you saying, the bad guys always get away. You also said that in the 911 tape. Did you have a feeling that there are a lot of people that do get away with crimes? In other words, were you sort of predisposed in your mind in some way to think that criminals get away too often?
Not in general. I think in our neighborhood, there's geographic advantages for burglaries.
Do you have any idea, why do you think Trayvon would have confronted you the way he did? I made a comment on the air one day, and I got beaten up pretty bad for saying this could have all just been a terrible misunderstanding or a mistake. Do you think maybe, is there any possibility he thought you were after him and you thought he was after you, and there was some misunderstanding in any way?
I've wrestled with that for a long time, but I can't. One of my biggest issues through this ordeal has been the media conjecture, and I can't assume or make believe.
The one witness that you first met, the guy with the cell phone that I mentioned, asked about your demeanor right after the shooting. He was the first person, I guess, on the scene?
Yes, sir.
First person you saw. And he said that you looked like you had been, quote, butt-whooped, like you had had a fight, and that you were asking, call my wife, just tell my wife. But, you know, he was acting like it was nothing. Is that how you were feeling at the time? Because you didn't find out, you said, till later that Trayvon had passed away.
No, I knew that I had discharged my firearm, and I was scared, nervous. I also thought the police were going to come and see me with a firearm and shoot me. I mean, I was terrified.
Did you look over at Trayvon? You obviously at some point recognized he had been shot, because you didn't know it in the beginning. Did you look over at him at any time and realize he was in really bad shape?
No, sir.
At no point. And how long was it between the time you shot him to the time the police actually got to the scene?
It felt like forever. I'd say 15 to 30 seconds.
It was that quick?
Yes, sir.
Immediate. So in other words, they had already been on their way, and they were there within 15 to 30 seconds. What do you make of all the national media attention in this case? There are crimes that happen every day. The nation is focused on your case. Why do you think that is, and what do you make of it? And what does it mean to you?
It's surreal. I don't like that they've brushed to judgment the way they have. I feel that anytime they have a story that's remotely positive, they interpret it negatively.
You had called police on at least 4 prior occasions and had mentioned black male suspects. I wanted to give you a chance to respond. Why you called, what were those instances about?
They also stated that, and I never volunteered that information. It was always at their request that I described them, and even when I described them, I didn't volunteer the race until they asked me. And there was also Hispanic kids and white kids that were in the
That you made calls about?
Yes, sir.
Let me ask you this. I want to go back to one specific in the case, if I can. And it's the issue of you following him. And we heard, I asked you earlier about the dispatch call, and you said you stopped, you didn't follow him. There's one moment that you were apparently, as you look at the grounds of where this took place, and there's the apartment, and there's the overhangs, and then there's another street on the other side, and you had gone to the other street, correct?
Yes, sir.
At some point. So how do you get to the other street if you're not following him? I mean, where were you going at that point?
I was walking from where I had parked my car towards my street. He went right down in between the houses. I walked straight across to.
But in that sense, were you following him?
No, sir.
You weren't following him?
No, sir.
And this is after the 911 call? During the 911 call?
When they stated, we don't need you to do
So why were you walking back to your street and not back to the car?
I was
at that point. If I'm trying to get the chronology right.
Certainly. Where I parked my car was the back of townhouses. There wasn't a way to know what the street number was. And I knew if I walked straight through, it's a circle, Retreat View Circle. I knew if I walked straight through to there, that would be Retreat View Circle, and then I could tell them exactly what 1, 2, 3, 4 retrieve you circle, and not just a general area of where my car was like I had done previously.
Call your next witness, please.
Dr. Valerie Rao.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that your testimony in these proceedings will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
You may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon, ma'am. If you'd please tell the members of the jury your name.
Yes, my name is Dr. Valerie Rao. My last name is spelled R-A-O.
And how are you employed?
I'm the District 4 Medical Examiner.
And what comprises District 4?
District 4, we have 3 counties, Duval, Clay, and Nassau.
And are you the chief medical examiner in your district?
Yes, I am.
How long have you been a medical examiner in total?
32 years.
And are you also a licensed physician and surgeon?
Yes,
And how long have you been so licensed in the state of Florida?
since 1981.
Can you summarize for the members of the jury, please, your educational and professional background?
Yes, I got my degree in medicine in 1971, after which I went to London. I spent a year and a half doing pathology at 2 hospitals, one St. Heliers Hospital in South London and the other St. Andrews Hospital in East London. After which I came to the US and I did residency, 5 years totally. 2 years doing clinical pathology at Berkshire Medical Center, Pittsfield, Massachusetts. 2 years doing anatomic pathology in Albany Medical Center, Albany, New York. 1 year doing forensic pathology in Baltimore for the state of Maryland. I'm board certified in anatomic, clinical, and forensic pathology. I then spent a year in Tucson, Arizona, where I did medical examiner work. Sorry. I was medical examiner for a year. 1 year as medical examiner. After which I went to Miami, where I was an associate medical examiner for a total of 19 years. I then took a chief position in District 5, where I was there for 3 years. I went to the University of Missouri in Columbia, where I was associate professor for 2 years, and then came to Jacksonville, where I've been here for about 7 years.
And just briefly, what are your duties as a medical examiner?
In the state of Florida, we're required to investigate sudden, unexpected, unnatural death, and ultimately to sign the death certificate, the cause and manner of death.
What is meant by the term pathology?
Pathology is the study of disease in the human body.
And what is meant by forensic pathology?
So in forensic pathology, it comes under the umbrella where the sudden, unexpected, unnatural death cases come under the forensic pathologist.
And have you ever been qualified as an expert in the courts of the state of Florida in the field of forensic pathology?
Yes.
Approximately how many times?
Hundreds of times.
Do you also have experience examining injuries to living people?
Yes.
And explain what that experience is.
Okay, so when I was in Miami, where I was an associate medical examiner, had the opportunity to work there at the Rape Treatment Center for 18 years. where I saw several thousand living patients, examination and treatment of these victims.
And what types of injuries would you see when examining those victims?
Okay, some of the patients that came were also physically assaulted. So there were injuries that come under the category of blunt force trauma. There were patients that were stabbed, so that's sharp force injury. Some of the patients were strangled but did not die. So we saw this gamut of cases in living patients.
And what are blunt force injuries?
So blunt force, the term is to distinguish it from sharp force, meaning that the instrument that's being used, for example, a bat would qualify as a blunt weapon. A stick, if I was to bump myself as I came in here on the corner of this table, I would suffer blunt injury if it was severe enough to cause injury. Whereas a sharp force is injury that is caused by a sharp weapon, a knife, a bottle that is broken and then the sharp edge used to inflict trauma. So this is the difference between sharp force and blunt force trauma.
Within blunt force trauma, are there different types of blunt force trauma?
Yes.
And what are those?
So the first part of it, let's look in progression of severity. A bruise, we're talking about a small bruise, is where the skin is intact and the blood vessels under the skin are injured and they bleed under the skin and get what you know as a bruise. The skin is intact. Then you have a scrape where the skin is compromised and it's, for example, a rug burn would qualify as an abrasion. Then you have the lacerations where not only the skin is torn, but the underlying tissue is also torn, exposed to the outside, and depending on the severity of the laceration, you will get varying degrees of bleeding and trauma.
All right. Are bruises also known as or referred to in your field as contusions?
Yes.
All right. And then scrapes is the same as a laceration?
Abrasion.
I'm sorry, abrasion.
Yes.
And then there's lacerations?
Yes,
Okay.
which is basically, laceration is a tearing of tissue.
All right. Have you ever been qualified in the courts of the state of Florida as an expert in the area of conducting rape examinations and all manner of injuries associated with rape victims?
Yes,
And again, approximately how many times?
hundreds of times.
During your tenure as the medical examiner in Miami, did you also examine other categories or sets of living victims?
Yes.
And explain what you mean by that.
So, for example, somebody alleging police brutality, the medical examiner, we just were housed directly across a very large hospital in Miami, Jackson Memorial Hospital. So the police would ask if we could go and examine to see if the allegations were actually borne out by the trauma. So we would go across the street, we would photograph, we would put out a report, and those reports come under consultations. Also child abuse cases, especially if the clinical people thought that the child was going to die, they would ask us to come and take the photographs and do the interpretation. So we basically practiced forensic medicine, not really forensic pathology, where you're only looking at dead people.
Now, at this time, I would tender Dr. Rao as an expert in the area of pathology and forensic pathology.
I don't think that's necessary under the current case law in this state. So.
She'll be able to testify in those areas.
Thank you, Your Honor. Were you asked to examine some evidence in the state of Florida versus George Zimmerman?
Yes.
And specifically, what were you provided in regards to that case?
Okay. So I was given a whole series of things that I asked for the whatever is available, because I'd like to do the consult, having as much as possible in the database before I formulated an opinion. So what I received was a reenactment of the incident involving the fatal shooting. This was recorded on the 27th of February 2012. I got a set of 36 photographs taken of Mr. Zimmerman, documenting the clothing, the injuries, the medical records from the Altamont Family Practice Clinic. And of course, there were two records from this clinic. One was on the 27th of February, and the other one was on the 9th of March, 2012. I got a DVD labeled Sanford PD Lobby and Others. It showed the vehicle going to the police department and Mr. Zimmerman being taken by the police into the department to be booked. A DVD labeled Medical Examiner Report and Photographs, and this included the medical examiner report, the body diagrams, the autopsy photographs. 26 autopsy photographs were taken, the toxicology report, and then a report that states 2 individuals were involved in a physical altercation in the yard, and one of them fired a handgun and the decedent fell to the ground. And the other items in the same folder were the medical examiner autopsy report, the toxicology report. So this is what I received.
Did you also receive 2 photographs of the defendant at the scene the night of the event?
Yes.
And when you said reenactment, when you referred to the reenactment, was that an interview where he conducted a walkthrough and led investigators through the scene and explained to them what happened?
Yes.
After reviewing all those items, in terms of severity, how would you classify the injuries to the defendant's head?
They were not life-threatening. They were very insignificant. They did not require any sutures to be applied to Mr. Zimmerman. So, as I will refer to them, insignificant injuries.
Did you observe any lacerations to the back of the defendant's head?
Yes.
How many? 2. And were those lacerations depicted in the photographs that you reviewed?
Yes. They were. There was bleeding, so I was not able to look at them after they were cleaned, because subsequently when he went to the Altamont clinic, they were covered by Band-Aids.
And were you also provided the reports from the Altamont Family Springs Clinic describing the injuries as they were viewed by a physician's assistant the next morning?
Yes.
All right. Your Honor, would you assist me with the lights? Dr. Rao, let me show you first, State 79. Was that one of the photographs from the scene that you were provided?
Yes.
And State 76, was that a photograph from the scene you were provided?
Yes.
Let me show you States 57, where you also provided that photograph.
Yes.
All right. Your Honor, may I approach the witness?
Yes, you may.
Dr. Rao, let me give you this pointer. You can just press that button. Yeah. If you would explain for the members of the jury where the lacerations are located that you observed and that were referred to in the family clinic report.
Okay, so we have one small injury right there and one injury right there where the blood is streaming from. So these were the 2 lacerations.
All right. In the Altamont Family Clinic report, were you also provided with the measurements of each of those lacerations?
Yes.
And are either of those lacerations life-threatening?
No.
Why not?
Because they were so minor that the individual who examined and treated Mr. Zimmerman told him that the sutures were not required. So she put a Band-Aid on each of them, and that was the extent of the treatment.
All right. Are there also some contusions or a contusion on the back of the defendant's head?
Yes.
And can you show the members of the jury where that is in the photograph?
Right there.
And is that a life-threatening injury?
No.
Why not?
Well, the reason I asked for everything was I then looked at the entire case file, and when he walked from the police car to the police department to be booked, he was not incapacitated in any way. He was very alert and walking, in pace with the officers.
Are the injuries that you observed to the back of the defendant's head consistent with his head having made contact with a concrete surface?
Yes.
And why do you say that?
So, I've looked at the other areas that were photographed, and they have a sort of a pattern that were punctate, meaning that there were little areas which came into contact with a rough surface, But, so looking at the concrete area, again, the reenactment that I was given, it's consistent with his head having come into contact with that rough surface.
And are the injuries on the back of the defendant's head consistent with one strike against a concrete surface?
Yes.
And why do you say that?
Because if you hit the head one time, it is consistent with having gotten those 2 injuries at that one time. Because it's an area where it is protruding, because the head is protruding, because the head is a round surface, and so that one impact could result in the 2 lacerations that you see.
And are the injuries you observed to the back of the defendant's head consistent with his head having been slammed repeatedly into a concrete surface?
Okay, so I'm going to give you my, what I think based on the dictionary definition of slammed is. And there are 2 definitions from 2 different dictionaries.
Let me object, Your Honor. If she's going to define a word from a dictionary, that would be hearsay.
Please approach.
May I proceed? Yes, ma'am. Dr. Rao, using your definition of slamming, your common understanding of slamming, are the injuries to the back of the defendant's head consistent with having been repeatedly slammed into a concrete surface?
No.
Why not?
Because if you look at the injuries, they're so minor that to me the word slam implies great force. And the resultant injuries are not great force.
What type and extent of injuries would you expect to see if the defendant's head had been repeatedly slammed into a concrete surface?
So if somebody's head is repeatedly slammed against concrete with great force, I would expect lacerations. I would expect a lot of injury that would bleed profusely, that would necessitate suturing, and so I don't see that in this picture.
All right, let me turn your attention to States 47, where you also provided that photograph.
Yes.
And what injuries did you observe in this photograph, States 47? If you would, just describe those for the jury.
Okay, so there is a small abrasion on the bridge of the nose, right there. It's a very small little punctate at the tip of the nose.
Can you circle that with your laser, if you would, or just indicate it?
Right there.
Okay.
And right there.
And are any injuries in this photograph life-threatening?
No.
Why not?
He has no loss of consciousness whatsoever. He didn't have to go to the hospital. He went to a clinic.
Were there any contusions or abrasions that you noted in this photograph?
Yes.
All right, can you again show us where those are?
Yes. Right there and right there.
All right. How would you characterize or classify the contusions, the severity of the contusions or abrasions to his face?
Very small.
Could all of the injuries that you observe in that photograph have come from a single punch or a single blow?
Yes.
And why do you say that?
Okay, so if you look at the distribution of where the injury is, and let's think that I'm the one inflicting the blow. If I was to punch myself right above here, I would get the injury on the nose and on the few contusions on the forehead. So one blow would be able to inflict these injuries.
Are the injuries that you observed to the defendant's face consistent with the defendant having been beaten a dozen times or more in the face?
You know, if he was beaten repeatedly but with no resulting trauma on the face, then yes. But if the force is such that you get trauma, then only one time.
Did you observe contusions to both sides of the defendant's head?
On the sides, yes. Yes.
All right, let me show you State 75. Was that a photograph you were provided?
Yes.
And could you circle the area of contusion that you observed in State 75?
So one has to disregard this dried blood because it is coming from the laceration on the back of the head that I had demonstrated earlier. So we are looking at a contusion here, and there are very, very fine punctate abrasions that you need to have a close-up photograph to really see them.
And again, explain for the jury or define for the jury what's a punctate abrasion.
Okay, punctate means like a little speck, like a spot.
All right. Are any of the injuries depicted in State 75 life-threatening?
No.
And in terms of severity, how would you classify the contusions or abrasions in this photograph?
Yeah, very small injuries.
Could all the injuries exhibited in State 75 have come from a single blow?
Yes, one impact against concrete, yes.
Let me show you State 73. Was that also a photograph you were provided?
Yes.
And what injuries are depicted in State 73?
Okay, so here again you have to disregard the dried blood that's coming from the laceration to the back of the head. And so you can see very, very faint, again, punctate, small abrasions.
Are any of those abrasions life-threatening?
No.
And how would you classify the abrasions depicted in State 73?
Very insignificant.
Could those abrasions depicted in that photograph have come from a single blow?
Single impact, yes.
All right. And why do you say that?
Because the surface area on the side, if you look at my head, and I was to get, you know, on the concrete, I could get all those injuries from one impact.
You also mentioned that you viewed video clips of the defendant getting out of a police car and walking through the police station that evening. What did his appearance in that video demonstrate to you regarding his injuries?
Oh, he was not incapacitated in any way. He walked on his own power, and he was also conversing with the police officers during this reenactment.
All right. Thank you, Doctor. Judge, that's all I have.
Okay, thank you, Cross.
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon.
You got your appointment to your present position because Ms. Corey, the prosecutor in this case, appointed you, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so she's sort of your boss?
Not really, no.
But it was because of her. I mean, she appointed you to this position, right?
She actually sent my name up to the governor. So if you want to call that an appointment, well then, so be it.
Well, why don't we do this? I'm going to read a letter to you. Tell me if you consider this appointment. Pursuant to Section 406.15, I hereby appoint... I'll approach and let her review it, maybe. I just have it electronically.
It's okay, I could explain.
Okay, so let me ask the question.
Okay.
Is what I'm looking at a letter signed by Ms. Corey where she says that she appoints you to that position, yes or no?
That was the interim position. I can't say yes or no because I have to explain to you.
Well, I'll tell you what, I'll walk you through it.
One at a time.
I'll walk you through it, okay?
Okay.
There was a yes to that. She appointed you to the interim position?
Yes.
And you had another position as a medical examiner in the state of Florida too, correct?
Yes.
That was with the 5th District?
Yes.
But you were not reappointed to that position by the governor, were you?
I did not seek reappointment.
Okay,
It was
that was
tabled.
because, I'm sorry?
It was tabled. I did not seek reappointment.
And that was because of some of the problems that existed in your administration in that office, was it not?
Correct.
Okay. Yet you got the job with Ms. Corey's office, or actually in the same district where she prosecutes, correct?
She's a state, yes, yes.
How much of your work is on behalf of the state attorney's office in that district?
Well, the medical examiner really does not work for the state attorney. We are separate, but most of the time we are called by the state. However, the defense can call us. You could call me on this particular trial, and I would be here for you, just like I'm here for the prosecution.
Totally get that. My question was, how much of your work is on behalf of the state attorney's office in Duval County?
All the homicides.
Okay. All the work, right? You only deal with homicides, right?
No, we do suicides, we do traffic accidents, we do drug overdoses, we do natural death where there is no physician to sign the death certificate. So it's other work. Homicides are a very small percentage of our cases.
I'm sorry, let me clear it up. How much of the work that you do involve crime matters? And I'm presuming in that question that all of your crime matters are dealing with the Duval County State Attorney's Office. So how much of what you do is related to criminal activities?
Okay, so we have a total of 1,165 cases, autopsies.
Okay.
And out of that, we are probably 110 homicides. So that is the proportion.
Okay. And in all of that work, you work with these very prosecutors, correct?
That is correct.
I mean, these are the homicide prosecutors for that division or that office, right?
And we have a whole series of state attorneys, yes.
Okay.
But they are in that office.
So they called you to look at this, correct?
Correct.
Did they have you look at anything having to do with Trayvon Martin?
No. Well, they sent me the autopsy report, so I saw that, yes.
But you're not here to tell us anything about
No.
Trayvon Martin. You're just talking about George Zimmerman.
That's correct.
And if I get it right, it's your position that it's at least consistent that George Zimmerman may have only received as little as 3, did you call, what term did you use, smashing? Or,
Sorry?
what, slamming. 3 slamming into cement, correct?
I didn't use the word slamming.
I'm sorry, I thought it was your word.
No, I got that from the reenactment.
What word would you use to describe what happened to the head that you say hit cement?
Impact.
Impact. So it's your position that there are at least 3 impacts between that head and cement.
Yes.
Okay.
Concrete.
Concrete. However, and you said it's sort of consistent, so I'm going to walk you through some of that. I'm not going to use pictures right now. Let's just chat a little bit about it, okay? I think you used the suggestion that if you hit yourself in the nose that it could be all one shot, correct?
One blow, correct.
You're not certainly just suggesting that it was only one blow, correct?
No, but
Okay.
consistent with.
And you say consistent with to minimize the number of shots that it could possibly be, correct?
Not minimize, but if you gave me another scenario, I could look at that scenario and see if it's consistent.
Let me give you this scenario. He gets hit in the nose like this, just like that, but it does not go up here. So here's the first shot, and here's the second shot. How many is that?
2.
Consistent with that picture?
It could be, yes.
Is it any more consistent or any less consistent than the fact that there was one shot?
I'm sorry, I didn't get that.
I'm sorry. You said earlier that those injuries could be consistent with one shot.
Correct.
And now I think you may have said it could be consistent with 2 shots.
If the way it's depicted, like you have depicted, yes.
But well, you don't, just so we're clear, you don't know how Mrs. Zimmerman was hit by Mr. Martin, correct?
Correct.
So you're saying it's consistent with 1, potentially, yes?
Yes.
And it also is consistent with 2, correct?
If the way it was portrayed, yes.
Which you don't know.
Correct.
So could you just say, is it consistent with 2 as well?
It could be, yes.
Okay. And it could be consistent with 1.
Yes.
Right? Okay. And it actually could be consistent with another couple of hits with a palm, or, as you said, another couple of hits with a fist that just didn't leave visible injuries.
Yes.
So you're certainly not telling this jury that Trayvon Martin only hit Mr. Zimmerman in the face 1 time.
I'm just telling you what the injuries are and what it's consistent with.
Okay. Did you notice in those pictures the cuts on Mr. Martin's knuckle on his left hand, both on the ring finger and a slight one on the pinky?
Okay, those are not cuts, those are abrasions. So, because cut suggests sharp force injury, and they are actually where the skin is rubbed off on Trayvon Martin's hand, correct?
That was a yes? You did notice them?
Yes.
Okay. Are those consistent with striking somebody?
Yes.
So we have some injuries, the only injuries, as a matter of fact, besides the gunshot wound, are 2 injuries on his knuckles, correct?
Correct.
Curious, since you had a chance to look at the autopsy, were there any other injuries on Trayvon Martin at all?
No.
Any bruising injury?
No.
Any laceration injuries?
No.
Any punctate injuries?
No.
So you know for a fact that Trayvon Martin's head or any part of his body was not in contact with cement, correct?
Well, I didn't see any injuries. You can have a contact, but without producing trauma that's visible, so...
As Mr. Zimmerman could have, correct?
Correct.
A dozen of them even, right?
Sorry?
A dozen even, correct?
A dozen what?
Other impacts. Well, let's get more specific. We've now talked about the potential of 2, you would even admit, let me ask you this. Is there a possibility that with a swat or a hit or a fingernail or something, that even this abrasion on his nose could have been a 3rd?
Anything is possible.
Well, you're here as an expert,
Yes.
so I want you to give us your opinion. Is that possible based upon your level of knowledge?
Okay, so I will ask this. I know I'm not supposed to ask you questions,
Go
but
ahead.
you know. So then the next issue would be that each of the punctate marks on his head could have been caused by, you know, a fingernail scratch, or I mean that would be the next question posed. And we're looking at the preponderance of the evidence and the opinion rendered thereby. So, you know, we can continue this.
Let's move on. Let's move on.
Yes. Okay.
But we'll spend a moment on the nose. So you saw on Mrs. Zimmerman's right side there was a protrusion to his nose, correct?
What does that mean? I don't know.
I'm using the word protrusion. It was the first photograph. Let's go back and see if we can take a quick look at this. You see, you have, we both have one. You have a pointer, correct?
Yes, I do.
You see that spot right there?
That's the abrasion, yes.
No, right below, that little swelling spot right there. Do you see that?
I don't see a spot, but I see swelling, yes.
Swelling, I'm sorry.
Yes.
That swelling to an uninitiated view, actually all looks like there's a bone over there, doesn't it? But we know it's not, correct?
There is a bone, yes.
Well, but the swelling is not movement of bone, is it? Or is it?
I don't follow that. I'm
Let me
sorry.
just ask you to explain then. What is that swelling on the right side of the nose from?
Okay, so that's trauma, injury.
Okay. And what happens is the body reacts to it by rushing lymph fluid to it and all this other stuff. It sort of tries to take care of the site of injury or trauma.
Yes.
And that recedes pretty quickly, doesn't it?
It depends on the extent of trauma, yes.
Well, and we know in this case, you acknowledge the trauma and the swelling there, right?
Yes.
And you notice in the pictures after it that the swelling has receded, correct?
Yes.
So it does recede after a few hours?
Depending on the severity. Here it was not severe, so the swelling rapidly declined.
And you know that there was blood coming out of the nose as he was standing up, correct?
Correct.
Where do you think that that was bleeding from?
From inside his nose.
And where would that go if he's laying on his back?
Where would what go? I'm sorry.
The blood?
Well, it depends. If you are alive, you would, if it went back in your throat, you would cough it out.
Or swallow it?
Well, I don't know.
Well, I mean, it's going back down your throat, isn't it?
Yeah, you'd cough it out. I don't know if you would swallow it, but maybe that's a good suggestion.
Okay. So we have the nose injury, one. We have the potential of the injury up here that you identified could be a second shot, correct?
It's possible, yes.
Well, I mean, if I showed you a picture, let's just say that we did, in fact, have a video. And the video showed a smash to the head, to the nose here, and then sort of an overhand. Let's say that it was an overhand shot. You had a video, or let's say an eyewitness, who saw an overhand shot. Would that be consistent, the overhand shot, with that injury up there?
The small bruise?
Yeah, right up there.
It's possible, yeah.
Well, is it consistent?
It could be.
Okay. On the back here, you testified that you believe that all this was created or consistent to have been created with just one strike on the concrete or cement?
Okay, so all this, I don't follow that. I see 2 lacerations and a small bruise.
Okay, you see this laceration?
Yeah,
You
but
see this laceration?
okay, so, it's being actually camouflaged by the dried blood and the dripping of the blood, but once cleaned, the nurse that examined him said one was 0.5 centimeters and the other one was 2.0 centimeters, which is very small. And so, after it's cleaned and you look at the photographs, you don't see what your suggestion may be that there are a whole series of injuries back there.
All right, well, I'm just to ask a couple of questions about all this. You said, I think, in direct examination that this is consistent with one strike upon cement, correct?
Concrete, correct.
Concrete. Now, you're not suggesting to some reasonable degree of medical certainty that there was only one strike here, correct?
No.
So this could, according to where this was, let's identify a term. I'm going to use the term crown, and we know the crown of the head normally is up here.
Correct.
But I'm going to use crown in a different term for the next few questions, okay? And that means the point that hits the cement. Can we use that term for just a couple of questions? Do you know what I mean by that?
Do I do what? Sorry.
Rather than the crown, which would be the first thing to hit the ceiling if you stand straight up, I'm going to say that, let's just say that this is where the impact on the cement is, okay?
Okay.
Now, the head could impact just there, correct? And just hit there, right?
Well, if the impact is on the side.
Absolutely. Because we don't actually know what part of his head contacted the cement, do we?
We know that there are 2 injuries that resulted from the impact.
Right.
That's a given, right?
And they could be separate, right?
Except that it's in close proximity, yes.
Right. So I could hit a knuckle right there, or I could hit 2 knuckles at a time, correct? So it's according to how it happens, right? What the physics is of how it happens?
I'm not very good in physics, but we're not talking about knuckles, we are talking about one surface area. So I can explain just simply, I don't know about what the physics of this injury is.
Then let's get away from physics and talk this way. Let's just say that he was hit where, see this line right here? See that line? Do you see me making a line?
You mean the area?
No, the line I'm making with the laser.
Okay.
Okay. Let's just say that only that on this side came in contact with the cement. Is that possible?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
It's possible.
And if that were true, that only the point on this side came in contact with the cement, that only that injury would occur, or could occur that way, correct?
It's possible.
And now, if we look at the other side, the same line, that side, let's just say that only this side of the skull was in contact with the cement, then that injury would happen, correct?
That's possible too.
2 separate injuries, correct?
It's possible, yes.
You're not suggesting it's any more likely 1 or 2, are you?
So we're doing the preponderance of the evidence, and the preponderance would suggest that one impact is more plausible than the way the head is shaped to have 2 separate impacts. But if you say that was something that was eyewitnessed, then yes.
Well, what if somebody put their hand, let's say, on the side of a skull and smashed this way? Would that
not evidence.
was an injury just on one side of the skull, correct?
It could.
And you see this bruising right here, do you not? See that swelling?
No, that's the shape of his head, I think.
So in your opinion, you've come to a medical conclusion that that crowning over there is natural?
Yes, that is the parietal area of the scalp, yes.
I'm curious why it doesn't seem to show itself as protruded on this side.
And sometimes the shapes of heads are different, we're not all symmetrical. And if you look, there is no discoloration there. So that may be an anatomic variation.
So, right here, do you see any bruising or any discoloration at all in that photograph?
Okay, I don't see bruising, but I see small, very tiny punctate marks. And the other thing is, the photograph you're looking at, the hair is so short that if there was something there, we would be able to see it really well. And I have to strain to look and to see what you are suggesting. So I can't answer that question.
I just want to be clear, because the jury will have not even these photographs, but they will have much better photographs to view and to study. But as I do that, I want to point out to you, to see if we can focus you, is it your testimony that this coloring here, this darkening in this way, is a natural occurrence on his skull and not evidence of a bruising? Yes or no?
I don't see a bruise there, but I did see, because I also have very good photographs, which you can see clearer, there are very fine punctate abrasions.
Okay. Let's speak a moment for what you do see then, the punctate bruising.
No, not bruising, abrasions.
Punctate abrasions, I'm sorry. Is that the abrasions that you see over here?
Well, again, the photograph is so poor that, I have to look at my own photographs.
Then let's take a moment.
Okay.
Have some lights here on it. And I'm going to leave this up because it would be easiest for the jury, but let's coordinate if we might, doctor, the photographs you did look at and these photographs. May I approach the witness? Are you reviewing the photographs that you had?
Okay, so I will show you my pictures that I have. I printed them from the computer. So this is the one side. And this is the, I think, the photograph that you were showing, and you can see very fine little abrasions there.
Well, let's identify that you're now looking at a copy of what is State's Exhibit 73, and I think we're going to have to do this a bit more formal. So if I have a moment, Your Honor, I'm just going to have to get the actual 8x10s out of evidence. What I'm going to try and do, Doctor, is to identify your photographs and connect them to the exhibits in. Did you get an entire picture packet from the State Attorney's Office to review?
No, I got a disc, and I printed out some of them because it was taking me so long on the computer, so I just printed a few of them.
Okay. Then we'll do it this way in case you don't have them all. May I examine her from this location because I've got exhibits that we do not have on.
Is the jury able to see in here? Yes, you may do so.
Let me show you what's in as State's Exhibit 69. Your Honor, these are in already, so I'm just going to identify them for the jury and have her testify from it. And let me ask you if you can look, first of all, let's identify, this is in fact State's Exhibit 69?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
You want to hold it for a second? Thank you. And I'm going to question you about that if you look at the photograph. Is it your testimony that in Exhibit 69 there is no bruising above Mr. Zimmerman's left ear?
I just see the punctate abrasions. I don't see bruising. And there are some marks on the head which are nevi, which are moles, brown moles. So you are seeing that also like there and there.
So, to point out, 2 inches above his left ear, this area of lightening and darkening you do not perceive as swelling?
No, I don't think that's swelling. I just think that's the shape of the head, but it's a very, very funny angle. And so there's distortion in that photograph, and I cannot tell you that that's bruising. I'm sorry.
Okay. And similar in States 57, so we're clear for the jury. In 57, sort of a back view, I'll ask you to focus first at the area we just looked at, which is about 2 inches above Mrs. Zimmerman's left ear. Are you suggesting that, again, that is not any type of swelling or bruising, but rather just a natural contour of his head?
Okay, so if you are suggesting that that's a swelling, then the bruise should be so marked that I should not have trouble looking and identifying that as a bruise. So I can't comment on that.
Is that a yes or a no? Do you say that that is bruising or not?
No,
just above?
No, I can't see the bruise there. If that's what this part is what you're talking about, yeah, I can't say that.
Let me show you State's Exhibit 70, that's in evidence, which is a picture of the right side of Mr. Zimmerman's scalp, correct?
Correct.
And pointing your attention to the laceration, bruising, cut, use your term, not mine, just in the middle of that picture.
Yes, he has a bruise on the right side, plus he has the punctate abrasions, yes.
Okay. The bruise on the right side, how do you think that was, how did that occur?
Impact against concrete could give you that, and the other abrasions.
Now on number 70, let's look further back about 2 inches towards the back of his skull and tell me what you see there.
Okay. Are you referring to the small?
Yes, I am.
Okay, that is a small bruise. It's pink, discolored.
And is it your testimony to, well, how did that occur?
Impact could give you that.
And could that have been a different impact?
It's possible, yes.
It is possible,
it's consistent,
correct?
Yes.
Matter of fact, how much of a distance do you think there are between those 2 points of impact?
Well, I think it's not just the distance, but also one has to look at the curvature of the head when you are, and when I'm giving you an opinion, I'm not only looking at the distance between the two contusions, but I'm also looking at the contour of the head.
That's what I was curious about, so let's talk about that. The contour of the head is somewhat sphere-like, is it not?
Oval, yes.
Oval. So if you have 2 points on a sphere, or an oval, correct?
Correct.
It's convex, is it not, the skull?
Yes.
So if you have 2 points 2 inches apart, why is there not a continuous bruise or a scarring all the way across? Why would you have 2 separate ones?
Okay, so it's not scarring. Scarring is a different terminology.
I apologize for the misuse of the term. Why is it not one long, if it came from one contact, why is there not one long injury?
Okay, because the force applied to one area because of the contour may not be equivalent to the force in the other area, and so in one site the force may be sufficient to cause a contusion, but it's not, we're not like computers, it's not, you do something and you expect this result. We are dealing with a different configuration of the head, so I don't think that follows. It's a nice thing to be able to say, but I can't say that.
Yeah. Certainly it could have been 2 separate injuries, correct?
It's possible, yes.
Okay. In looking at States 69, I want you to pay some attention to what seems to be a view of the Mrs. Zimmerman's skull, correct?
Scalp, yes.
Scalp. That's right. Your skull will be underneath. Right?
Correct.
And I want you to pay attention to the top of the picture and see if you can tell us what you believe that protrusion to be. My term, not yours.
Okay, so on the other side, we are actually looking at a photograph of the left side of the head and the top of the head, and we actually are getting a view on the right side of that bruise that we talked about. So that's the same bruise.
Do you see the swelling is my question?
Yes.
Okay. So there's swelling, and you're suggesting, and I would like you to be clear about this for the jury's consideration, that in exhibit number 69, you do acknowledge swelling that seems to be to the right side of the midline of the scalp, correct?
Correct. But you got the bruise, which, if you want to say, well, this is a swelling, but there is no bruising there. And if the swelling was so severe that you are looking at on the left side, then we would have a significant bruise, and we don't see that. Whereas there it's a small bruise, but you can see the swelling. So you can't separate one from the other. So it's together.
Look at number 70, which we've talked about already, and tell the jury which bruise you believe that swelling is connected to.
I think it's that one. Because
I just want to be clear, you're thinking to the one that is behind the ear. You pointed to the one that is 2 inches or so behind the line of the ear.
I think because that's such a distorted photograph because we are able to see very well the right side. So why are we looking at a photograph of the left side and trying to draw that conclusion? I think that's extremely unscientific.
And I apologize for that. But I just want to be clear about one thing. It is your testimony here today that the swelling that's on the 69 on the right side of the midline of the scalp, that is the bruising that is the same bruising as exists with what you've identified now as the bruising behind the ear line on States 70, correct?
It could be. But like I said, it's very difficult for me to give an opinion on the photograph, which is so distorted.
Got it. Could it be a completely separate bruise?
Which one?
This one, the one on 69.
Well, if it was, why are we not able to see it from the right side?
Let's take a look at 71 then, and see what you see on that photograph.
Okay, so this is again the punctate abrasions that I talked about, and that is the bruise that we have to overlap.
And let me show you just at the very top of the crown of the head there, almost out of the top of the picture. Is that not the bruise that we see, or the swelling that we see on 69?
I find it difficult when half the photograph is cut to give an opinion. I would like to see what the injury is before I tell you that that's the injury. So why are we looking at distortion and half photographs when we have the full side to be able to look at and to render an opinion?
Well, I certainly only want to do and have you give us as good an opinion as you can. Do you have a photograph that better shows the injuries that we've now seen by looking at 69, which shows the swelling that seems apparent?
No, I have the same, but I have just copies.
Okay, but that doesn't show the swelling, does it?
They're the same photographs, so how can they not show? Okay, so they're the same photographs, so how can it be different?
I'm asking you, as you're here today, to tell me what picture you have of the right side of his scalp that shows or doesn't show the swelling that was apparent in State's Exhibit 69.
Okay, so I have the same photographs you have, except mine is, like I said, copies. So this is the photograph that you are describing?
I'm trying to find the one that's in evidence for that, if I might have a moment, Your Honor. Let me ask you to compare, if you would, the picture that you were just showing with State's Exhibit, so let me identify it, 70. Do you have that one?
I'm looking. Oh, no, I don't.
Let me have this back here. Thank you. So, the least number of contacts between scalp and cement were 3, correct?
Correct.
And as many as how many?
And that's a scenario that you posed, so you would know how many.
Well, if you were to look at this from a medical perspective and try and come up with not the minimum number, but the maximum number, give us your opinion.
I told you 3?
That's the minimum, correct?
Correct.
My question is, tell us, in your professional opinion, how many it could have been as a maximum.
I don't know.
Why not?
Because you were presenting the scenario about various possibilities, so you have to tell me, and I will tell you yes or no.
Well, as I said to you, there could be a possibility that those 2 bruises were 2 different ones, correct?
On the head, yes.
2 bruises on the right side of the scalp.
Correct.
Okay, so I want you to include that. We also talked about the possibility that the 2 lacerations could be 2 different hits, correct?
Correct.
So I want you to include that. What other, and we talked about the nose and the forehead being 2 separate ones, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so keep going. How many other of those bruises could have occurred? Let's talk about the left side of the scalp. It has been your testimony that it is consistent with just the least amount of 1 strike on the cement could have caused everything on the left side, correct?
Correct.
How many could it have been more than that?
I don't know. You have to give me a scenario and we will say consistent or not.
Okay, you got hit 6 times on the left side of the skull. Consistent?
No.
Why not?
Because the injuries are so minor and they are patterned to some extent. So that would be beyond the realm, I think, of possibility.
4 hits on the left?
Well, if somebody is an eyewitness and says 4 times that this injury occurred, then of course that's the best estimate. So,
okay.
You know.
Okay, so let's talk about 4 on the left side. You agree that would be consistent with the medical evidence, correct?
If it was witnessed, yes. But you can't just say 4 times and you're not seeing the injuries to match the 4 impacts slamming.
Listen to my question.
Okay.
Is there any medical evidence that would exclude the possibility that skull was hit on the left side 4 times?
That's not my opinion, but it could be. It's possible.
Okay. Nothing to exclude.
Nothing, sorry?
Nothing to exclude that as a possibility.
It's possible.
Okay. Now on the right side, the side where we see the 2 separate bruisings, we talked about that, right?
Yes.
And we also see the punctate bruising in front.
Abrasions.
Abrasions.
Correct.
Anything that would medically exclude that the right side was hit 4 times?
It's possible.
Okay. We see 2 of the bruises, right? And they could be separate, right?
Possible.
Then we see the punctate abrasions. That could be another one, right?
It's possible.
Then we see the swelling that you say may be connected with one of the bruises, but that could be separate, correct?
I don't think so, because underlying the bruise you have the swelling. It's so impossible to get a bruise and a swelling and say, well, that was 2 different sites. Now, the swelling is separate from the bruise, yes, but they are one injury.
Okay. Presuming that the bruising on States Exhibit 69 and 70, that the bruising that we see matches up in the jury's mind with that point of swelling, correct? You're making the premise.
It does.
Okay. In your opinion?
Well, you can see it.
Okay. And the jury will, of course, make that determination, right?
Correct.
Okay. And then there could be how many maximum times could the back of the head have been hit on the cement?
Well, to me, it was consistent with one, but you suggested by turning the head in different ways, it could be two. It's possible.
3 or 4?
With no injury, yes. If the head is in contact, producing no injury, yes.
How about the swelling below the lacerations? Did you notice that?
The contusion.
Below, right.
The contusion, yes.
Could that have been a separate injury?
No, it's possible.
Well, if the head was hit so that just the crown hit the cement one time, let's say his head just snapped back and it hit here, that could have caused one of the lacerations, correct?
Yes, but it's
Okay.
so close to each other. That's the proximity that really kind of makes it possible.
Okay, I appreciate that. So if the head was tilted one way and then smacked back so that this was the crowning point, that would be one laceration injury, correct?
It's possible.
And then if the head was this way, another laceration injury, correct?
That's possible.
And then if I was able to resist one of the tossbacks of my head, I can actually keep the crown higher, and that back bruising that you just identified could have occurred, right?
It's unusual because, you're talking about a flat surface. So the head will have to be really contorted to be able to give you all those injuries from different impacts.
Change it now that it's not the cement, okay? Change it that it's here. Change it that what was hitting, that the bruise on the bottom wasn't flat, that it was against the side. Would that cause the bruising down here without the lacerations?
The side of what?
The side of the cement. You know that it was a cement sidewalk, correct?
Yes.
And you know that they were at the very edge of it, correct?
Yes.
So you know that there is, in fact, an edge of cement, correct?
It's possible.
I'm sorry?
The injury is possible, like you are suggesting. Yes.
Well, here's the cement, and we've been talking and discussing as though all the injuries are on the flat surface, right?
Correct.
So let's introduce now that there could have been some injuries here.
You don't object to that as facts, not in evidence.
Hypothetical with an expert overruled.
It's possible.
Okay, so the possibility is that the head being hit against the cement could easily, the two lacerations above may not have ever impacted again when the bottom bruising occurred, right?
That's possible.
Okay. Mr. Guy focused you on life-threatening injuries, right?
Correct.
Did they suggest to you in your testimony that this has anything to do with life-threatening injuries?
I'm sorry, I didn't get that. What is that?
Did the state attorney's office, when they prepped you for your testimony here today, suggest to you that life-threatening injuries was an element of anything having to do with this case?
No.
Okay. You understand that the extent of injuries are not significant in this case, do you not?
I'm sorry, I didn't get that.
Okay. You understand that the extent of any injuries that Mr. Zimmerman incurred in this attack have nothing to do with the case itself, correct?
You don't object to that as calling for a legal conclusion.
Please answer the question, please.
I will. Were you prepared for the examination to identify whether or not you could testify that there were life-threatening injuries or not?
No.
Okay. None of these injuries that you identified as they turned out were in fact life-threatening, were they?
Correct.
What about the next injury?
The what, sir?
The next injury.
What is that?
The next injury he would have sustained.
I'm sorry, I didn't get that.
Could the injury that he didn't have to survive, could that have been life-threatening?
Object to that is calling for speculation.
Sustained.
I might just have a moment, Your Honor. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Any redirect?
Dr. Rao, who was it that appointed you Chief Medical Examiner for District 4?
The governor.
And are you testifying here today because Ms. Corey wrote a letter on your behalf to the governor some years ago?
No.
Are you slanting your testimony anyway today because Ms. Corey wrote a letter on your behalf to the governor some years ago?
Absolutely not.
All right. You were shown some photographs by defense counsel. Were you provided with all of those photographs prior to trial on the disc that you referred to?
Yes.
In fact, I think you referred to 36 photographs of the defendant?
Yes.
Did that also include photographs of his hands?
Yes.
Would you expect someone who was undergoing a severe attack to try to defend themselves?
Object, Your Honor, outside of scope and also speculation.
Sustained on both grounds.
You were asked about a scenario where the defendant may have hit his head on the edge of concrete when you watched the defendant's walkthrough or recreation. Did he describe his head getting hit on the edge of concrete?
No.
Judge, thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you. May Dr. Rao be excused?
She may.
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you very much. You are excused. Call your next witness, please.
Mayor, the next witness is available, but could counsel approach very briefly?
Yes. We have a 15-minute recess at this time. If you'll put your notepads face down on the chair and follow Deputy Jarvis back into the jury room. Please be seated. Court will be in recess for 15 minutes.